So welcome to ECCM 401, session 4. In this session, we will be looking at the quantitative approaches to measuring customer satisfaction. And as usual, there are certain learning outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session, right? The first one being to be able to understand and explain quantitative research. And then the second one being able to understand the process of hypothesis formulation using different variables. And then the third one being to be able to understand and explain the application of survey technique in quantitative research for measuring customer satisfaction. So these are the learning outcomes we hope to achieve by the end of the session. So let's get right into it. So what is quantitative research? Quantitative research is the process of collecting and analyzing numerical data, right? So if quantitative research is the opposite of qualitative research, what is qualitative research? What is qualitative research? Should I name names? Since my assistant did so well, this should be very easy for you. So what is qualitative research? Okay, Yusuf, go ahead.
Qualitative research is an unstructured research methodology based on small samples that provide insight and understanding of problem setting.
Okay. So in terms of what I just explained with regard to what qualitative research is, this is a very, a problem-based question. So you are supposed to think on your feet. Now hear the question again. If I say quantitative research is the process of collecting and analyzing numerical data, and quantitative research is the opposite of qualitative research, then what is qualitative research? Foster, your hand is up.
Qualitative research does not deal in numbers or numerical data.
Numerical data.
Okay, so what is qualitative research?
One question what I'm confused during the time.
Yusuf, you are disturbing us. Abdulhaq, go ahead.
It is a research.
I told you this is a problem-based question. This is a problem-based question. So as soon as you start, I know whether you are right or wrong. Right? I'm expecting you to use problem-based learning to answer this question. Abdulhaq, okay. Foster, your hand is up again.
It is a process of collecting and analyzing non-numerical data.
Simple. Thank you, Foster. Please, do we get it now?
Yes, madam.
So some of the things don't require you to reinvent the wheel or think very far. So it's a process of collecting and analyzing non-numerical data, right? And being that quantitative is the opposite, quantitative deals solely with the process of collecting and analyzing numerical data. So by collecting and analyzing this numerical data, we can be able to find patterns and averages, make predictions, test causal relationships, and generalize results to wider populations. Now, this is what makes quantitative research well suited to measuring customer satisfaction. Because in measuring customer satisfaction, we always seek to determine causality. What are the factors that are causing customers to be satisfied? And what are the factors that are causing customers to be dissatisfied, right? So in that regard, being able to test causal relationships using quantitative research places it in an opportune position to assist us when it comes to measuring customer satisfaction. Again, the ability to be able to generalize the results from quantitative research to wider populations makes it, once again, best suited to our cause in terms of measuring customer satisfaction, because a firm at any point in time is dealing with huge numbers of customers that cut across various segments. So to be able to get results that we can generalize will make it easier for us to test causality, use the outcomes to improve our strategy so that we can apply these strategies that we have developed based on the outcomes we got across all the population of customers that we serve as a brand or a company, right? So for instance, in terms of testing a causal relationship, we can use quantitative research to be able to determine whether there's a relationship between transaction speed and customer satisfaction when it comes to online banking, right? So in this case, we are trying to see whether transaction speed is a factor that contributes to customer satisfaction. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Still on the issue of quantitative research. Again, like we mentioned earlier, quantitative research is the opposite of qualitative research. So with qualitative research, while we are dealing with non-numerical data, including text, video, or audio, right? Including the focus group discussions you are going to video and submit, which is qualitative. When we come to quantitative, we are dealing solely with numbers, right? So everything is quantified. And therefore, we can say that quantitative research is used to quantify a research problem, generating numerical data or data that can be transformed into usable statistics. So quantitative is all about the quantification and turning everything into figures and statistics, whereas qualitative is more about the understanding, right, and the exploration. So you seek more of meaning rather than numbers and statistics, right? So because of the quantifying nature of quantitative research and its ability to transform research problems into numerical forms that we can transform into usable statistics, it is best suited to the testing of hypotheses. Has anyone heard of a hypothesis before? Has anyone heard of the word hypothesis? Have you heard of it before? Has anyone heard of the word hypothesis before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So what is a hypothesis? What is a hypothesis? What is a hypothesis? Abdulhak, what is a hypothesis?
Yes. So it's basically a proposed explanation of a particular problem.
Are you sure it's an explanation? An explanation means that you have actually tested it and you have proven it, so it explains the situation.
Like a proposed explanation.
It's not a proposed explanation. If it's proposed, then it's not an explanation. So you have to fix that word explanation there. What word will you put in place of explanation? Because when you say explanation, it's no longer proposed.
Okay, is a statement that can be tested
Good.
by scientific research.
So it's a statement, right? And this statement usually predicts something. Musa, your hand is up.
Yes, look, I was going to say it's an assumption or an idea.
Yeah.
Proposed, tested.
Good. The same thing, right? So it's an assumption or an idea or a statement that has been proposed, right? Which can be tested.
Yeah.
Good. So that generally is what a hypothesis is about. But for the purpose of our discussion, we will add one more dimension to it, that this statement or proposition or assumption that the hypothesis proposes usually depicts the relationship between variables, right? So we'll get into more detail of the hypothesis and how it is formulated very soon. But before we do that, let's look at the benefits of quantitative research, right? Why do we have the option of quantitative research? And what can it do for us if we choose to apply it to measuring customer satisfaction? First of all, quantitative research deals with larger samples, right? So a broader study can be made involving more subjects, thereby enabling generalization of results to a larger population. Remember, we talked about the fact that qualitative research deals with smaller sample sizes. Do you remember?
Yes.
Good. But quantitative helps us be able to deal with a larger sample size. And remember, we talked about the fact that when it comes to firms dealing with their customers, they always have a huge number of customers scattered across various regions and markets and sectors and destinations. So being able to use a technique that gives them access to sample a larger number of these customers is something that will help them to be able to get good results that they can generalize to the rest of their customer population. So quantitative gives us that luxury of working with larger samples and then being able to generalize the outcome of the research that we conduct using these samples to the larger population. Also, quantitative research gives us the ability to obtain objectivity and accuracy. And this is because quantitative research requires careful experimental design. Unlike qualitative research where you can wing it and you can think on your feet and you adjust the line of questioning and the responses that come as you go along, you don't have that option with quantitative research. There are specific rules that have to be followed in terms of the research design for conducting quantitative research. So there is the possibility that anyone who follows this experimental design that was used to conduct whatever quantitative research that you did will be able to replicate the study because everything has been followed in the stepwise manner, right? So once you are able to follow the quantitative experimental design to conduct a quantitative research, the outcome of your test can easily be replicated because the steps are there and they are clearly outlined. So anybody who decides to do the same study or a similar one knows how to go about it and is guaranteed to come up with accurate results similar to what you got, right? Also, we can talk about the fact that quantitative research is faster and easier, right? With qualitative research, when you are gathering the data, you have to be there in person. If you can't be there in person as the senior researcher conducting the research, you need to be able to train an interviewer or researcher to go and do the interviews or the focus groups on your behalf. Now, while you are doing the interviews and the focus groups, because it does not deal with large numbers, you have to be able to take your time and do it in small groups to be able to get the results that you're looking for. And in doing so, you have to be able to get the perspective of each person. And in interviewing each person, you need to be able to allow the person to express themselves so that you can get the best insights out of them. Now, this takes a lot of time. Unlike quantitative data collection, which is more structured and straightforward, you develop a questionnaire, you give it to the respondent, they fill it, you take it and you analyze it. And the interesting thing is, even with quantitative, you do not have to show up in person. There are so many ways by which you can get the questionnaire to whoever your respondent is to fill it and get it back to you. So you can decide to mail it to the person in the post like they used to do in the past, or you can decide to make it an automated survey that you send to people's mobile phones, or you send it to their emails, or you create it using Google Docs and send the link to them for them to be able to fill it, right? And as they fill it, the responses will be recorded and collated automatically in real time. So you can be able to interview hundreds and perhaps thousands of respondents at a time, right? Unlike qualitative that you have to be able to take your time and actually speak individually to each respondent throughout the interview process to be able to get good insights for your study. So that makes quantitative research faster and easier to implement. And lastly, we can talk about the fact that quantitative research is also more cost effective. Because think about it, you are being able to survey hundreds, if not thousands of respondents at a time, sometimes without actually having to be physically present, right? So it is cost effective for you to be able to do this as compared to the interview you will conduct in a qualitative research where, like I said, you have to show up in person, you have to incur costs to move from your location to where that person is. You have to spend time analyzing all the responses that the respondent gave to you and then doing the thematic analysis and doing all that. It takes a lot of time compared with the quantitative where most of it can be automated, including the analysis process. With the qualitative, you have to put in more effort to arrive at the same or similar outcome. However, don't be mistaken, both types of research have their strengths and weaknesses. And that is why sometimes you will find people combining the quantitative and the qualitative research together in doing research because they want to be able to benefit from the advantages of using both techniques. So I put this question to the class. When you combine quantitative research techniques and qualitative research techniques in one study, what is it called? Abna Samoa.
Please, it's called mixed research.
It's called what?
Mixed research.
No, come again. The name is not complete.
Okay.
You've left something out.
Okay.
Think about it and come again.
Okay.
Anyone want to try? Abna has done, is it 80% of the work? He's left with the 20% to complete the name of that particular kind of research. Yusuf, what is that kind of research called when you combine quantitative and qualitative? Dabra, Yusuf, tell us.
Please, ma'am, is it mixed method?
Yes,
research?
Mixed method research. Thank you very much. So it's mixed method, right? So Abna, you've heard what it's actually called. It's called mixed method. Okay. So now that we've understood what quantitative research is and we've also understood its benefits, let's talk about hypothesis formulation, right? So a hypothesis is one of the basic building blocks in quantitative research, and it forms the basis for the development of the variables that we are going to test and the kind of analysis that we are going to conduct to be able to explain or understand the relationship between these variables. So when we say hypothesis, for those who try to define the hypothesis, we are referring to a statement that is used to explain a phenomenon or predict a relationship between two or more variables. So at this point, we are just trying to explain it or predict it. We do not have concrete evidence to justify this prediction or explanation, right? But we are proposing, right? That's why when we are formulating hypotheses as part of research work, it's unfortunate none of you are doing long essay. After we do the discussion on the variables and we discuss and try to explain how they are related to each other, we will always add the statement, and therefore, based on the discussion above, right, the following hypotheses are formulated, or the study purports that, or the study asserts that. All these phrases, asserts that, purports that, means that we are opining, right? We are guessing, we believe this should be the case. And this either stands to be proven or falsified based on the kind of analysis that we run and the outcome of the analysis, right? Therefore, we always talk about the fact that hypothesis must be consistent with the existing body of knowledge. Now, when we say the existing body of knowledge, we are talking about the existing literature, right? You know about journal articles, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
You've heard about journal articles?
Yes.
Okay, so have you accessed any journal article through the university database before?
Yes.
Which one?
I don't know whether I'll get the name right. Imelda or something.
Okay, it's Emerald.
Emerald, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's Emerald, right? So well done, Foster.
Emerald.
At least you have some basic experience. You've tried your hands at downloading an article.
Are we free to laugh?
Patience. Patience. Are you in class or you are playing? Patience.
I'm sorry, madam. I'm sorry.
Okay. So Foster, Emerald is one of the major databases that we download articles from. So good job. Does anyone know of any other database, any other academic database, apart from Emerald? Does anyone know of any other one? Should I name names? Does anyone know of any other one? Georgina Kumsin. Georgina Kunsin, do you know any other academic database? Yes. Do you know any other academic database apart from Emerald?
No, please.
How come? You've never downloaded an article before?
No, ma'am.
Did you do research methods?
Yes, I did.
Were you taught about articles and journals?
Yes, we were.
So how come you don't know any journal database? Please, the dialogue in the background is upsetting me, especially the language that is being used. Please.
Sorry, love.
Georgina, answer my question. So you did research methods, and you were taught about articles and journals, because I know all the lecturers who teach research methods, and you don't know any journal database. Foster knows everyone. So that is, I'm going to give this as homework to everybody. I need you to go to the University of Ghana library page. Are you listening?
Yes, please.
Good. It's an assignment. I'm going to turn it into assignment. You will submit it through Sakai. And that one too is due by Friday. I need you to list all the databases that we use as management researchers. So all the databases in the UG library online repository that are relevant to us as management researchers. I need you to list all of them.
But Mom, we did this assignment with the research method last week.
And you don't remember. Interesting. Because if you did the assignment and you remember, as soon as I asked,
we do remember.
As soon as I asked, you would have told me. The time has
I
passed.
didn't mention the names.
The time has passed. You can't do it.
Now we thought you would mention names.
Me, I'll mention names.
Yes, ma'am.
I asked people to volunteer. Nobody volunteered. Okay, so Yusuf, I'm naming you. Will you save the class?
Okay. Now we have the ECCM Digital Library, Aluka, American Institute of Physics, annual reviews.
Hold on. You are mentioning, no, Yusuf, hold on. You are mentioning databases in general. I'm talking about databases that are relevant to us as management researchers. So management researchers are people like you in the marketing department, people in public admin, people in HR. There are specific databases that we get articles from to do our work. Not every database is best suited for us. All the databases you have mentioned, we do not use them for our research. So I need databases that are relevant to us as management researchers. So Yusuf, unless you know any of them, we are in trouble. Abdul Haq, your hand is up.
Madam, what about Elga Online?
No. Hey.
Google Scholars.
Hey, you're a business school student too. Google Scholar is a search engine. Although we use it to search for articles, it's a search engine. I need actual academic databases. Hey, I'm going to tell your research methods lecturer. You should go and change all the grades he gave you. You people are putting him to shame. Hey, hurry up. The databases.
Madam, please, what about Statista?
Hey! People are going further and further away. Hey! Loretta, all those who are giving wrong answers, give them minus 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. All of them.
Okay, Mom.
No. You are doing this assignment. Everybody is doing it. I need no less than 5. No less than 5. So everybody by Friday, get a nice Word document. And then let's
Oxford reference online.
What?
Oxford reference online.
Are you trying to upset me or something? Because if that's what you're trying to do, not succeed though. If they said you don't find me. Hey!
Madam, what's the question?
Madam, are we to list the search engines for humanities?
Hey! Do you know how broad the humanities
we don't
are?
get the
I didn't
we
say
don't get the
humanities.
question. Well,
I didn't say humanities. I said management. Management research.
for management.
Databases that are relevant to us as management researchers. The fact that you decided not to do long essay doesn't mean you are off the hook, because you did research methods. And I'm teaching you measuring customer satisfaction, which is pure research. So these databases, you have to know them. So the databases you are mentioning really give me cause for concern.
Can we talk about ABI?
Business source complete.
Loretta has mentioned one, EBSCO host. So now we have Emerald and EBSCO host. Is it getting clearer to you people now?
Yes, Edinburgh University Press.
Hey! Hey, I'll do stop talking. Stop talking. This is serious. Hey, those who are laughing, this is serious. So this is very serious.
Talk.
Now can we
Can
talk
we
of
name
Factiva?
Factiva?
Yeah. Where did that one do come from? People get serious. These are common databases that we mention all the time. All the time. In fact, why am I wasting time? So apart from Foster, the rest of you, go and list 5 databases that are relevant to management researchers in the business school. 5.
Including the EBSCO and Emerald.
EBSCO and Emerald are taken. In fact, there are so many others apart from EBSCO and Emerald. Eric, go ahead. Eric, you said Journal of Advertising. Okay, so you're also off the journal assignment. You are doing the database one.
Madam,
Journal of Marketing Theory. Yes, that's another one. So you're off the journal assignment.
Journal of Business to Business Marketing.
Who is speaking? Who just spoke?
Journal of Business. Musa.
Journal of what?
Journal of Business to Business Marketing. Business to Business Marketing.
Okay. Yes, that's another journal. So Musa, you are on the journal assignment, but you are doing the database assignment. Yes,
Madam.
Is that Nadia or Patience?
Nadia. Yes, please. Hey.
Okay, so Patience, go. Then Nadia, you can come in.
Journal of Interactive Advertising.
Where did you see it? Patience, where did you see it? So people are now Googling. People are now Googling, Abby.
Madam, it's not that like we learn and forget, but sometimes the way the exams is structured, you just have to pass the exams and don't go.
This is not about exams. No, this is not about exams. Some of these things, they have to be part of you, because I believe most of you, in fact, almost all of you will go ahead and do a master's. And these things are the foundational building blocks that, because at the master's, you can't dodge long essay. You will definitely do long essay. So if the foundational blocks of doing long essay set, you can't remember, how will you do it? The databases are the starting point, because that is where you go and find these journals. So if you don't know the databases, how can you find the journals? And again, if you go to the database and you don't even know what journal you are looking for, are you with me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is very, very important. I need you to be able to retain some of the basic building, and research methods is one of the basic building blocks for your master's degree. Whether you decide to do MPhil or MBA. Are you listening to me?
Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am.
So please, everybody, go back and revise. Next week when we come back, I expect everybody to tell me all about the management databases, all the different ones that we have. And then tell me at least 2 journals each. Because we have so many journals in marketing. Am I understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please.
All right. So let's continue. So like we said, hypothesis must be consistent with the existing body of knowledge, right? So assuming you know these journals and the databases, they represent the body of knowledge that exists in the field. So we are marketers. So when we say the existing body of knowledge, we are referring to the existing body of knowledge in the myriad marketing journals that we have, right? So it is from these journals that we will pick out the variables that we are trying to study and look at how these journals have explained the relationships between them And that is what will inform our formulation of these hypotheses, right? And once you have formulated them, they are both testable and falsifiable. Testable in the sense that once you have been able to hypothesize the relationship between them, you can go ahead and test to see if it is true or not. And falsifiable in terms of the fact that you are asserting that the hypothesis is one particular way. So it's a prediction. But that prediction can either be proven to be true or false. Hence, the fact that we are saying hypotheses are testable and falsifiable, right? So variables play different roles in the formulation of hypotheses. Because remember, we talked about the fact that based on the existing body of knowledge, there are certain variables that are relevant to the field that we are studying. So we will be able to know these variables and the roles that they play to be able to know how to position them when we are formulating the hypothesis. Now, variables can play a number of roles when it comes to quantitative research. And when we are putting the variables together in the form of formulating hypotheses, all the hypotheses that we end up formulating for a particular study come together combined with the variables that they hypothesize to form what we refer to as a research framework or a conceptual framework. So what you're seeing in front of you right now on the screen is a sample research framework that shows various hypotheses, right, that predicts the relationship between different variables. So you can see that the variables are labeled depending on the position they are in and the role that they are playing. So based on that, from the framework, we can see that we have about 5 main kinds of variables. We have independent variables, dependent variables, mediating variables, moderating variables, and then we have control variables. And we're going to explain each of them one after the other to understand the role that they play. So the dependent variable is exactly what it says it is. It is a variable that is dependent on another variable, right? So the variable that it depends on is the independent variable, because the independent variable is the one that does things to be able to influence what happens to the dependent variable. So in this case, when it comes to measuring customer satisfaction, we are looking at how the other variables and factors that surround the service delivery process and the product manufacturing and delivery process influence customer satisfaction. So in this case, what variable will we say customer satisfaction is? Given that we said the dependent variable is a variable that is dependent on other variables or other factors. So what kind of variable will we say customer satisfaction is? Patience.
Other variables.
What kind of variable will we say customer satisfaction is? Patience, your hand is up.
Madam, dependent variable.
Good, dependent variable. Because the customer satisfaction is dependent upon a number of factors surrounding the service delivery process, or surrounding the manufacturing process, or surrounding the process by which the customer purchases and consumes the item. So customer satisfaction is a dependent variable. Good, Patience. So moving on, now that we have determined that a dependent variable is a variable that is dependent upon another variable, which is referred to as the independent variable, we are now going to explain what the independent variable is, right? Because we have established that a dependent variable is influenced by changes that take place in the independent variable. Therefore, we can say that the independent variable is a variable that is manipulated in order to observe a change in a dependent variable, right? And this change can either be positive or negative. So when it comes to measuring customer satisfaction, which is our dependent variable, there are certain independent variables that can have an effect on customer satisfaction. And these effects can either be positive or negative, right? So off the top of your head, can anyone give me an example of an independent variable that can affect customer satisfaction? Any factor that can affect customer satisfaction? Now, I'm bearing in mind that you have not read much of articles, right? But I know in research methods, you did some discussion. So you have an idea of what kind of independent variables to propose that can measure customer satisfaction. So, Foster, your hand went up. An example of an independent variable that can affect our dependent variable, which is customer satisfaction?
Madam, the price.
Price. Right? So price is an example of an independent variable that can affect customer satisfaction. Good, Foster. Anyone else? An independent variable that can affect customer satisfaction. I'm going to name names. Abna Samoa.
Madam, please, service delivery.
Service delivery, that's another factor that can affect customer satisfaction. So in this case, customer satisfaction is our dependent variable, and then service delivery and price are what? What kind of variables are those?
Independent.
Independent.
Good. So now we know what independent and dependent variables are. Let's move on.
Yes.
The next variable we can talk about is a control variable, right? So generally, control variables are potential independent variables, but they are not the focus of our study. So we will put them in the model, but they are not of a direct consequence to us, right? So we put them on the side to let whoever is reading the model know that we know that this variable is also a potential independent variable, but it's not the focus of our study. However, we know it can affect the dependent variable, so we will put it aside and control for it. Controlling for it means that we will still put it in the model and test it, but we will not formulate a hypothesis to represent it. So let me take you back to the model and show you something. What is the difference between the actual independent variable and the control variable in this model? Look closely and tell me. In terms of the presentation, here the control variable we have is gender, right? So here we are saying that gender is a potential factor that can affect customer satisfaction. However, it is not a direct focus of our study, but we know it can affect the dependent variable of customer satisfaction. So we are placing it in here to test it and see if indeed it will show a positive effect or no effect, right? So in terms of presentation, who can spot the difference between how the independent variable is presented and how the control variable is presented? Who can spot it? Please, also, I've already answered questions. Can you kindly put your hands down, Abdul Haq and Derek, so that I can be able to see when hands are raised? Thank you so much. Okay, so who will tell us? Should I name names? Frederica Ando. Frederica Ando. In terms of the presentation of the independent and dependent variable, what are the differences? How are they presented in the model? That makes them look different. Yes, Nadia.
Madam, please, I think both the independent variable and the control variable matches to the customer satisfaction.
Yes, but look at it in terms, how are they matching to the customer satisfaction? Look closely, Nadia, how are they matching?
I think the ease of use is, I don't know if I should say is directly.
Yeah, Nadia, go ahead.
Madam, I don't know if the ease of use is directly affecting the customer satisfaction more than that of the control variable.
Both of them are directly affecting it. Okay, Abdulhaq, try.
Okay, yes, ma'am. So graphically looking at it, it is clear that the gender, the control variable is closer to the customer satisfaction than the ease of use.
That's in terms
than
of
the
space.
independent variable.
That's in terms of space.
Okay.
Look at the graphical presentation. Abna Samwa, you want to try?
Yes.
Oh.
For the between the ease of use and the customer satisfaction, there's a mediation of perceived value. But for the gender, there's nothing between gender and customer satisfaction. But with customer satisfaction and ease of use, there's perceived value, perceived value will come between ease of use and customer satisfaction, and also customer support services to
Now,
come
what you've
between.
told us is the whole model. I've not even gotten to those other two you've added. Currently, our focus is on the independent and the control variable. Yes, Abdul Haq.
The arrow that links the control variable to the dependent variable is in dots. It's break it. That means
good.
Yes. While the independent variable is a straight line.
Good.
So within So it means that with the gender, which is the control variable, there are possibilities of how do I use it? Which word do I use?
Let me help you. So the broken line means that we are not directly hypothesizing for it. Does it make sense?
Yes, madam.
Good.
Yes.
So you can see that there's no H by it. Can you see?
Yes.
Good. Because it's a control variable. We are not directly hypothesizing for it, so we will not put an H by it. And to show you that it is a control variable, we will make the line a broken line. That's why it looks dotted. Please, do we all understand?
Yes or no?
Good. So
Yes,
that's the main
please.
difference between the control
Madam,
variable and the independent
I
variable.
raise my hand.
So we can quickly swap right now and put gender here and put ease of use there. And gender can easily fit in as an independent variable, right? So that is the difference between a control and an independent variable. A control variable, we admit, has some effect on the dependent variable, but it is not of primary interest in our current analysis or our current research that we are doing, right? But we admit that they have the ability to influence the model. So we will put it in the test for it by way of controlling for its effect on the dependent variable. So that is a control variable, right? Then a moderating variable is a variable that has the ability to influence the direction and or strength of the causal relationship between an independent and a dependent variable. So unlike the mediating variable, right, which is a variable that intervenes in the relationship between a dependent and independent variable, a moderating variable does not intervene. So when we say intervene, it means it inserts itself in between the two variables, being the independent and dependent variable. So you can see that in terms of the arrow distribution, perceived value is in between ease of use and customer satisfaction, such that we can go from ease of use to perceived value, then to customer satisfaction, because it is a mediating variable. But with customer support services being a moderating variable, it is not intervening, so it's not in between, but it is influencing the relationship nonetheless, such that it can either make the relationship stronger or weaker. And that's the role that a moderating variable plays. So whereas the mediating variable inserts itself in the middle, and the independent variable has to go through it in order to affect the dependent variable, the moderating variable does not insert itself in the middle. It rather stands back and influences the relationship from a distance. Please, does it make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
So with that, we've understood the 5 main kinds of variables that we can see in a research framework and that we can hypothesize for, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now that we have seen the different kinds of variables, let's look at how these variables can be put in the form of a hypothesis, right? To formulate the relationships between them. So when we talk of a direct relationship, we can have the following hypothesis. Ease of use has a significant positive effect on customer satisfaction, right? So here we are talking about the dependent and independent variable in one breath. And that is what we call a direct relationship. So you can see that when you look at the framework, do you see ease of use is directly influencing customer satisfaction? Can we see that?
Yes, madam.
Good, because the arrow is pointing directly from ease of use to customer satisfaction. That's what we call a direct relationship. And we can hypothesize for that. Then we can talk about a mediating relationship, right? Where we can say perceived value mediates the relationship between ease of use and customer satisfaction, because ease of use and customer satisfaction have perceived value directly in between them. such that ease of use has to affect perceived value in order to affect customer satisfaction. Does it make sense?
Yes, madam.
Good. And then for the moderating variable, we can talk about the fact that perceived value, customer support services moderates the positive effect of ease of use on customer satisfaction. So moderating is in the sense that it is not mediating, it's not in the middle of them, but it can strengthen or weaken the relationship. So we say it moderates that relationship. Now, when it comes to hypothesis, depending on how the hypothesis is formulated, there are different statistical techniques that you can use to test them. So if it is a direct relationship, like the one that we have between ease of use and customer satisfaction, we can use statistical techniques like correlation. Who has heard of correlation before? You've done quantitative. Who has heard of correlation before? I know you've heard of correlation.
Yes, please. There are relationships between two or more.
Good. So correlation helps us to determine the relationship between variables, right? So correlation does not just determine the relation, it does not tell us just the relationship. It also tells us the strength and direction of the relationship. So we can have a positive correlation and we can have a negative correlation. We can have a weak positive correlation. We can have a strong positive correlation. We can have a weak negative correlation. We can have a strong positive correlation. Please, does it make sense?
Yes, madam.
Good. Abdulhak, you said what? The extent to which two variables are linearly related, meaning they change together at a constant rate. Ayo. You need to go and refine your quantity. Because if you say they change together at a constant rate, then that means that they are moving in the same direction. That is a positive relation. That's a positive correlation.
Correlation, yes.
But if you have a negative correlation, they will not change together at a constant rate. So Abdulhak, this means you have to go and revise. You people need to go and revise. This is an aspect of research method too, ladies and gentlemen. What we are doing is isolating one aspect of research methods that has to do with measuring customer satisfaction. So you better go and brush up on your research methods before we get deeper in, because we are getting deeper and deeper into the research methods. So for direct relationships, you can use correlation. We can use multiple regression, which I know you have heard about. In fact, you may have practiced. In this course, we are going to do actual multiple regression. That's going to be your term project. You do multiple regression. You collect data, you code, you enter into SPSS, and you do multiple regression. So better go and brush up on your research methods. Because if you do not, it will turn into an assignment. I have still not forgotten the assignment about the databases. So those who didn't know the databases, you are still doing that assignment. Now for moderating relationships, we can use hierarchical regression and structural equation modeling to also test for moderating relationships. And then we can also test for mediating relationships. But that one, we can solely use structural equation modeling to test for that. Okay? But for the purposes of our course, we will understand how to measure customer satisfaction using multiple regression analysis. So we will soon develop a questionnaire, collect data, and analyze it using multiple regression, right? So we will determine a number of factors and we will formulate hypotheses based on these factors, which will guide us into developing our questionnaire. So the hypothesis is the basis and the starting point of the whole research, because it is the variables that you identify in the literature and put together in formulating your hypothesis that will influence what variables you will collect data on in your questionnaire. And the same thing will influence what variables you will put together in the framework or model to be able to input into the analytical software and then analyze to get results, right? So now that we have been able to understand the process of hypothesis formulation, I need you to go and read about various hypotheses, right? And different variables that have been used in these hypotheses. So for this assignment, you are going to look for journals in marketing that have been written on customer satisfaction. Are you listening?
Yes, please.
Good. So you're looking for journal articles on customer satisfaction. And here you are supposed to identify independent and dependent variables from these journals, right? So this is the main assignment, and this is to the whole class. Look for about 5 journals on customer satisfaction and pick out 5 different independent variables. 5 that the journal article says influences customer satisfaction. And I need you to write the variable, the independent variable, and the journal article that you got it from. You have done research methods, so I know you know how to do APA referencing, true or false?
True.
Good. So Loretta, are you there? Loretta, you're going to guide them to be able to find 5 journal articles each that have been written on customer satisfaction, and then tease out 5 separate independent variables that these journals have found to influence customer satisfaction. So that is the assignment for everybody. I'm going to set up the assignment in Sakai. You're supposed to have it done by the next lecture, so that we will go through them, so that we can be able to see the various factors based on existing knowledge. Because remember, we talked about the fact that hypotheses are formulated based on existing knowledge. Do you remember? Do you remember?
Yes.
Good. Now, these 5 variables that you are going to find are going to form the basis for your own frameworks that you are going to develop, which you will collect data on, because everybody will collect data, enter into SPSS and analyze. That's your term project. And you are doing so individually. So the 5 variables that you find, you are going to build your questionnaire on, which is going to carry separate marks. So the questionnaire you will build will carry marks. The coding you will enter into SPSS will carry marks. And then the analysis you will run will also carry marks. And you will do that on an individual level. Is am I understood?
Yes, madam.
So that is your assignment. You should get to work on it. I'll prepare the assignment brief, and then I will post it into Sakai, and then I'll ask Loretta to also share it on the WhatsApp platform. But I see Abdul Haq has been sharing them, so I believe he will download from Sakai and share with you all, so you can be able to see the requirements. Well, all I'm saying is you find 5 journal articles that have done research on customer that are based on customer satisfaction, and look at the variables that they tested, the independent variables that they tested that they reported to influence customer satisfaction, and then pick out 5. Then you create a Word document with your name, index numbered nicely on the cover page. And then the remainder of the pages, you tell us each variable and then the journal article you got it from. So the journal article has to be referenced using APA style. And then you tell us the independent variable that was in it. Okay, so that's the assignment. The details will follow as we have agreed. So now that we have understood the process of hypothesis formulation, let's look at survey technique, right? Once you have developed your hypothesis, like I mentioned earlier, the variables that are in your hypothesis, you will now put them together into what we refer to as a survey to be able to collect data using a questionnaire. So in developing a survey, you take these variables and you look at how they have been measured in the existing knowledge which we talked about, which is existing research, to be able to understand how to measure them and put these measures together in what we refer to as a questionnaire and get respondents to respond to the questionnaire. So what is survey technique? Survey technique is basically the most fundamental technique for conducting quantitative research. It is a quantitative method whereby a researcher proposes a set of predetermined questions. Now, these predetermined questions I said are based on what? What are the predetermined questions based on? Somebody, quickly. What are the predetermined questions based on?
Previous research.
Previous research on what? I just mentioned that these items are put into the hypothesis based on previous research. And once you formulate your hypothesis, you take these items and then you put them together in the questionnaire with predetermined questions to measure each of them. And what are these items I'm talking about? We just learned all about them.
The variables.
The variables. So you have each variable in the questionnaire with a number of predetermined questions measuring each of these variables. right? So once you put a questionnaire together, you then give it out to the sample of respondents that you want to answer the questionnaire for them to answer, right? And this can be done either face-to-face, so you take the questionnaire, you take it to them, and you have them fill it and you bring it back. Or you do it over the phone where you call them, you ask them the questions one by one, they give you their answer, and then you take it on their behalf. Or you post the questionnaire to them, and then they'll answer and post it back to you. Or you put it in the form of an online survey, like a Google form, and then you automate it and send it out to them for them to respond, right? So that is the survey technique. Now, survey technique is especially useful in quantitative research because when you aim to describe or explain features of a very large group of individuals, right, or various groups of people, it makes it easier. Because remember, we talked about the fact that as part of the main benefits of quantitative research, you have access to do research on a larger sample of respondents. Do you remember?
Yes, madam.
Good. So the survey technique helps us to be able to question a large number of respondents, right? And we will be able to get general details about this group of people who represent our population of interest. So for instance, if your target population is, say, all Generation Z consumers who are at least 18 years, then at least you know that all the people who fall within that group can be possible respondents to your survey, right? So based on the outcome you get from the survey, because once you collect the data and you analyze it, you'll be able to see those factors based on statistical technique that are more important than others, because the multiple regression technique that we are going to learn about will help us to even rank the factors in terms of importance. So once you know the factors that are very important, you can use that information to go ahead and do depth interviews where you go further to ask the respondents, why is this factor the most important to you? Why is this factor important to you? Why is this factor not so important? So this goes back to what I was saying about blending quantitative and qualitative research, because each of them has strengths. Quantitative research will help us to be able to rank the factors and tell which one is more important than the other. But they will not be able to tell us why one is more important than the other. Does it make sense?
Yes.
So qualitative research will help us to get to the bottom of the why. And that is why we often combine both the quantitative and the qualitative. So with the survey technique, we have been able to appreciate the fact that the survey will be developed based on the variables that we have hypothesized for. And we will represent each variable with a set of predetermined questions which our respondents are going to respond to. Now, there are different types of survey that you can perform, but the most popular among these is the cross-sectional customer survey. And we will soon find out why. Now, the cross-sectional customer survey basically collects data to make inferences about a population of interest at one point in time. So you collect the data from the respondents once, you analyze and you report your findings. Now, this is unlike a longitudinal customer survey that is done over a period of time, right? So with a longitudinal customer survey, you collect the data over a continuum to be able to observe the changes in the respondents' behavior and their thought processes over this period that you are studying. And this could be over a period of days, months, years, or even decades, right? So in terms of longitudinal customer surveys, we can talk about three main types. The first one we can talk about is the trend, which means that as a researcher, you examine changes in trends over time. And here you'll be studying the same people, right? The same people with the same characteristics, but you will not study the same group of people that you started with over that period of time. You may change the specific people that you question, but they will all have similar characteristics. It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Unlike the panel type that you are studying the same people throughout the years. So perhaps you will interview them once this year. Then you interview the same people again next 2 years. The same people again next 3 years. Here you are just following the same people, right? Which is referred to as a panel. So once you finish collecting this data over this period, you obtain what we refer to as panel data. And this type of data is used a lot by our brothers and sisters in finance. So for the trend, you are interviewing the same people in terms of characteristic, but not the same group of people that you interviewed the first time. But with panel, it is the same group of people you interviewed the first time. You keep interviewing them over and over again over the years, right? And the third type we can talk about is the cohort, which identifies some category of people that are of interest. And then we regularly survey people who fall into that category. And here, the key word here is cohort. So we can decide that we want to interview the ECCM cohort of the, when you graduate, you'll be what? What year were you admitted? What year were you admitted to the University of Ghana?
2017.
Okay, so we can say we are following the 2017 cohort. So when you finish school, we interview you. 5 years later, we come and interview you again. 6 years later, we come and interview you again. Here, we are following this cohort throughout to see what they are up to, right? So that's another kind of longitudinal survey. So we are surveying the same cohort throughout the period, depending on whether we are doing it over months or weeks or years, right? Now, with the longitudinal and the cross-sectional survey, they have directly to do with the actual customer. So if you are measuring customer satisfaction, for instance, using a longitudinal survey, we can ask you people, the 2017 cohort, assuming we are doing a cohort type of longitudinal survey, what your experiences about your course content are once you finish school. How do you feel about the things that you learned? And then 5 years later, when you have gone into the world and you have worked for some time, we'll come and interview you again and ask you, now at this point, after 5 years of finishing school, how do you feel about the course contents that you learned? This doesn't make sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. So with cross-sectional and longitudinal, we are dealing with the actual consumer or customer who buys and consumes the product. But for the mirror survey, which is the third type of survey I want us to take note of, we are not looking at the customer per se, we are looking at the employees who serve the customer. So here we take the same survey or questionnaire that we give to the customer and we modify it a bit and we give the same survey to our employees. The main idea here is to be able to test whether they understand what it means to satisfy customers. We want to test whether they understand what is important to customers. That way we can be able to tell whether there's a gap between what they believe customers want and what the customers actually want. So the ability of the firm to modify this survey that they are giving to customers and administer it to their employees is the process we refer to as the conduct of a mirror survey. That way we can be able to tell whether or not we are working with employees who are poised and know what our customers need and are ready to help them satisfy their needs, right? So that is it for the three types of survey that we have. Mirror survey is a mirror of the survey that we give to our customers, be it cross-sectional or longitudinal. In the longitudinal or cross-sectional survey, we are asking them what factors matter to them when it comes to customer satisfaction, right?
Okay.
But in the mirror survey, we also want to know whether our employees know what matters to customers when it comes to customer satisfaction. Does it make sense?
Okay, yes.
So we will use the responses we get from our employees to compare to the responses we get from our customers to see if we are on the same page.
Okay.
Because if we don't know what the employees believe the customers want, we cannot be able to tell whether they are satisfying them properly. Do you agree?
Okay. Yes, please.
Good. So we need the mirror survey to tell us our side of the story. Do our employees know what the customers require to be satisfied? And then we compare to what the customers are telling us they require to be satisfied. So if they are similar, we know that, okay, the employees know what the customers need and that's what they are delivering. But in the event that the employee survey that we give them, which is the mirror survey, shows that they have no idea about what factors matter to customers for them to be satisfied, then we know as an organization that we have to work on training our employees to understand these factors that the customers need to be satisfied. Do you understand now, Nadia?
Yes, please.
So
Thank
we
you.
need both sides of the story so that we can see where the gaps are to make the necessary corrections.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nadia.